Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Liu, and I'm a librarian with the Santa Clara County Library District. Welcome to tonight's conversation with Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique and Dr. Amy August of the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change at San Jose State University. Dr. Carter-Francique is the executive director of the Institute and is also an associate professor at San Jose State in the Department of African American Studies. Her scholarly endeavors and field of focus encompass the intersection of sport, society, and social justice that is inclusive of issues of diversity, social movements, and the dynamics of social change and development. Dr. Amy August is an assistant professor of sociology at San Jose State and is also the assistant director of the Institute. Her research focuses on the assessment, instruction, and classification of preschoolers in school and sport, and she also explores and compares how teachers and coaches make decisions about children's kindergarten readiness in the respective contexts of early learning. Together, Dr. Carter-Francique and Dr. August collaborate with a team of colleagues and student interns to promote social justice in and through sport. Tonight, they will discuss the history of the Olympic Project for Human Rights and the silent gesture salute of Tommie Smith and John Carlos, and the legacy of athlete activism and social change. Please welcome Dr. Carter-Francique and Dr. August.
Oh, thank you for that great introduction. I'm Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique. I will share with you the amazing team from the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. But before we do that, we want to just at least give acknowledgement, a land acknowledgement to those that are here today and say that we gather at San Jose State University. We're gathered on the ethno-historic tribal territory of the Thiamin Ohlone, who were the direct ancestors of the lineage enrolled in the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and were missioned into Mission Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores. And the lands on which the San Jose State University is established was and continues to be of significance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. And so with that, we want to give our thanks to all those that made it possible for us to be here today. So yes, legacy of the salute, how are athletes uniquely positioned to be activists for social change? So we'll share a little bit of that today when we talk about this presentation, and we'll definitely get into a little bit about the history of the Olympic Project for Human Rights and the legacy of Tommie Smith, John Carlos, Dr. Harry Edwards, Dr. Ken Noel, and all those involved in the Olympic Committee for Human Rights, as well as the Olympic Project for Human Rights. Again, I'm Akilah Carter-Francique, the Executive Director for the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. I also serve as an Associate Professor in the Department of African American Studies. And with me today, I will pass my virtual microphone to Dr. Amy August for her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here tonight and to meet you all. My name is Amy August, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. And I'm also an Assistant Professor at San Jose State in the Department of Sociology and Interdisciplinary Social Sciences. With that, I'll pass the mic to our Executive Assistant, the fabulous Beth Doyle.
Thank you, Dr. August. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We're excited to be here with you. I am Beth Doyle, the Executive Assistant to the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. So I help make the wheels go round. So I will hand it back to Dr. Carter-Francique.
Thank you, Beth. And just so you know, Beth, again, is all fantastic, all amazing. She'll be dropping some great links to share with you all today. So we definitely want you to capture those links, take a look at them, and learn more about the Institute and the things that we talk about today. So with that said, to give you a little history, the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change, affectionately known as ISC, we were established in 2017 with a mission that we are dedicated to research, analysis, and education at the intersection of sport and society. And so again, in 2017, the Institute was launched as the brainchild of Dr. Harry Edwards. One of the things that the Institute goal is to continue to promote this legacy of equity and social justice, which is also embedded into the DNA of San Jose State University. Again, it was the home and birthplace of the Olympic Committee for Human Rights that was organized around 1967 and then ultimately culminated in what many of you may recognize out there and perhaps have walked on our campus to see is the statue with the gloved raised fist of Tommie Smith and John Carlos, or also known as the Olympic Project for Human Rights, the Legacy Salute as well. So again, we welcome you to peruse our website. We'll drop some links in there and then share that information with you as we continue our discussion today. So thank you again, certainly for joining us as we embark. To learn more about us, just real quick, you can find us at sjsuwordstoaction.com, our Facebook page, SJSU Words to Action, as well as our Twitter at SJSU Words to Action, and our Instagram, thanks to our fabulous interns, Words to Action SJSU, to find some great information and learn more about us here today. So we're here to talk about this notion, this legacy salute. Not only the notion of those that came before us or those that we see before us with Tommie Smith and John Carlos and their efforts, but also the notion of the ally. So I got a trivia question for those in the audience. And if you're one of our students, you cannot answer. But who is the second place winner of the 200 meter from 1968? Let us know and we'll check in with you later. Okay. So today our goal is to talk a little bit about what is sport, what is activism, to provide a historical context of activism and this notion of revolution. Also to talk about the different types and ways that athletes have been an activist, but you myself may find yourself to be an activist. Also to identify, how do you promote social change in your community? And finally, just to provide some resources for social change. So again, we thank you for joining us, and we'll start our presentation. Dr. August.
Thanks. So when we enter this kind of a forum, we do a lot of thinking about what sport is. And so usually when we think about sport, we think of activities that are organized so that participants can assess their performances and compare them to the performances of others or to their own performances from one situation to another. But sport, its organization, its meaning, the purpose of sports often vary from one cultural context to another. Sport can include activities that involve free-flowing, playful action that exist solely for the pleasure of the participants. But it can also include events that are scheduled and regulated to showcase player skills for the pleasure of spectators. So for our purposes today, we're going to adopt a broader definition of sport that can include all the examples that I just listed. So it's important to note too that over time, the meaning of sport has evolved to include physical culture, which is defined as all forms of movement and physical activities that people in particular social worlds create, sustain, and regularly include in their collective lives. So some examples might include Tai Chi in a park, capoeira in a plaza, or even double Dutch on the sidewalk. So moving ahead, as we examine the role of sport in society, it's really important to acknowledge that sport is socially significant. It's a form of activity that's socially significant for many people. They've been integrated into major spheres of social life, including the family, religion, education, the economy, politics, and even the media. So we see sport pretty much everywhere. But as we think about it as sociologists and as sports studies scholars, oftentimes we analyze the sociological experiences, implications, and interactions within and through sport. So we analyze how it's organized, who is participating, what kind of experiences fans are having, and more. And as we do this analysis, we recognize that sports are social constructions. And if you're not sure what a social construction is, the definition is provided on the slide here. And when we think about sport as being a social construction, that just means that it's been created by people as they interact with one another under particular social, political, and economic conditions. So essentially, that just means that, as people interact with one another, they construct these shared ideas about what sport is, what it means, how it should be conducted, and who should participate. And really, because sports are social constructions, that just means that we can analyze them, and we can look at a society and what kind of sports exist and are popular. And that can tell us a lot about the values of that society, and the values of the people who play or watch or sponsor the sports in the society. So in other words, they can tell us a lot about who holds power. And because sports are embedded in our lives in so many different ways, they can reinforce traditional ideas and beliefs in many societies. So in that sense, they're a conservative force. History is kind of being pulled forward with sport and through sport because of that traditional element. But at the same time, sports often provide this opportunity for traditional ideas and beliefs to be challenged, such as we're seeing with the athlete activism that's prominent today. So as we see that sport holds a significant space in our world, and we see that the emphasis to have our teams and our athletes, our young men and women, like in this COVID period, people are requesting that they return. We just see how important sport is for many people throughout society. And it's an issue of debate that, it certainly is open to a lot of debate, which we can have at another time. But we see how significant sport is by how contested that issue has been. But we also see that the significance of sport, is just so crucial to our society, and that sport reaffirms concepts, ideas, beliefs, and values, such as religion, ability, social class, gender, and race. There are a lot of sort of cultural tropes and beliefs about each of those different areas that sport kind of perpetuates. And so, in this sense, sport has served as this contested terrain, not only nationally in the United States, but worldwide as well. And so sports provide this grand stage for individuals to contest ideas about social issues, both on a national and a global level. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Carter-Francique as we continue to explore the legacy of activism.
Thank you, Dr. August. That was a great introduction to give us that definition, but also talk about how sport sort of manifests itself in our society and operates in our day-to-day. Some key words that you talked about was this notion of history, but also the notion of sort of race, of gender, of religion, and how those play a role throughout our sport space and time. In addition to that, we've seen sort of the significance of that in this notion of sort of movements of equality and equity. And so I had the great opportunity just to peruse some readings earlier. And one of the things I really wanted to point out was different social movements that not only those movements, but perhaps those leaders that really changed the world. But I want to focus for today's conversation a lot on the people that were a part of the movement. And so some of you may remember these particular eras in time. Some of you may, again, reflect upon the particular legislation that sort of came out of that. But these are, again, different social movements that changed our world. And we can see some of that interaction and how it has perhaps played in combination with sport, and again, how sport operates. So we think about the women's right to vote in the 1920s, and out of that came the 19th Amendment. We think about the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, LGBT rights movement from the 1920s and even the 1970s, environmental movement that took place in the 1960s, or the internal resistance, again, apartheid, taking place in South Africa from the 1960s to 1990, a long journey. But within each of those movements, yes, there were leaders of those movements. We think about the women's right to vote, and you have some of those, the suffragist movement and Susan B. Anthony, if you will, really coming, Mary Church Terrell kind of coming out of those spaces. Civil rights movement, many may think of Dr. Martin Luther King and his efforts. some may think of other individuals that sort of came through these movements, but there was an interplay between these movements and sport. And we're seeing that interplay even today during our modern day civil rights movement when we talk about Black Lives Matter. And so what is activism? Activism really spins out of this notion of social movements. And to bring us a little bit more information about this notion of activism, Dr. August is going to share with us about what is it not?
Yeah, well, so when we look at the city of San Jose and San Jose State in particular, there's a legacy of activism that's a really rich history, beginning with the Olympic Project for Human Rights. I'm sorry, I think, are we? Oh, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so this tradition of the Olympic Project for Human Rights, which was the brainchild of Dr. Harry Edwards, was really a project to raise awareness for the injustices that African Americans were suffering in the United States prior to and during the civil rights movement. So he gathered a coalition of athletes, including John Carlos and Tommie Smith, to stand up for their beliefs on the world stage at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. So this rich traditional history has been captured in a number of films, including Fists of Freedom, which was filmed in 1999 and directed by George Roy at that time. And so the documentary really captures the history and sort of the planning stages and the contestation among athletes and the blowback that they faced as they, masterminded this project to raise awareness. The documentary itself features interviews with athletes, including John Carlos, Tommie Smith, and George Foreman, and also with the activist Dr. Harry Edwards, with journalists, and it also features archival footage of the games and the fallout after the raised fist gloves by Carlos and Smith, including that which was faced by our second place winner, which we will announce shortly. So the Fist of Freedom was one of the earlier documentaries that showcased the story, but we also learn more about this history through the film Withdrawn Arms. And so this film was directed by Glenn Kano and Afshin Shihadi in 2020. In the film, filmmaker Glenn Kano partners with the Olympic gold medalist Tommie Smith as he looks back 50 years to the moment that helped define a movement and change the course of his life forever. And with that, we'll watch a brief clip from this film to kind of see in real life what sort of what this history entailed.
1968, Black athletes were expected to perform and shut up. We were dealing with racism. We were dealing with not having a voice. Running became my voice. I knew something had to be done. My next move would be immortalized in history.
He gave us all hope, so I too can do something.
That's a hero.
Is patriotism protesting oppression? Or is patriotism blind allegiance despite everything?
It's a whole different thing to square up with white supremacy.
Change doesn't happen in America without loss.
After that Olympics, he was ostracized from society.
When I returned home, the only job I could get was washing cars. One day, a car pulled up. They were FBI agents.
Tommie was a victim of a fear of radical thought.
Tommie's dreams had to be altered because of that gesture.
It destroyed what I loved, running in my family. I hit rock bottom. I needed someone to hold a hand out.
I did not recognize him. I said, there has to be a change.
Somehow, a Japanese-American artist became one of the captains of Tommie Smith's legacy team. Tommie's salute made such an impact on me that I had to collaborate on a project with him. I said, what if we could make a cast of your arm and then we'll figure out what to make.
I thought it was admirable for him coming and doing this. He took a stand with me.
My projects with Tommie allows you to be a witness of this rich history that Salute created.
That history is happening right now.
How can we not let ourselves neglect the next Tommie Smith?
The work that Glenn and Tommie have done is brotherhood. It doesn't matter who you are, we're all in this together.
For 50 years, people have been putting words in my mouth. That fist meant pride. It meant strength. It means togetherness, one as a nation.
I get goosebumps every time I see that video, but definitely invite all of you to take a moment and view this film to hear, as Tommie says, in his own words, his lived experience and his experience since '68, and that arc of sacrifice, I would say, that he has given in his journey. And then to hear some of the redemptive aspects of it through his work with Glenn Kano and through some of the recent acknowledgements by organizations like the International Olympic Committee, the US Olympic Committee, and others for his efforts. And so to share a little bit more about the importance of his efforts, this notion of advocacy, activism, Dr. August will give us a little bit more insight before we move into the efforts of sport, social activism, and social justice. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's come back with a few more definitions because I know that as one of the key themes of our talk tonight is to provide some information on how to get involved and how to fight for social change. So there are two different forms or two different ways to do this. Advocacy, we define as public support for or recommendation for a particular cause or policy. And activism, in contrast, is the policy of action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political or social change. So now both advocacy and activism can be done individually or in groups, as they both involve a deliberate process of influencing outcomes so that change can occur. But to bring about change requires sets of skills that allow a person to understand a problem and affect change using varied strategies and tactics. So there are a lot of different ways to engage in both activism or advocacy. And so we need to really focus on developing those skills so that we can successfully advocate for ourselves or on behalf of others. And this process involves awareness. So we have to know what's happening. It also involves analysis or seeing the different parts, their impact, and the importance to the effect as a whole. And then also we have to be able to pull together an action plan. Or in other words, we have to decide what to do and what the best way will be to do it. So action plans, if we delve a little bit more specifically into that component of the skill set that we need, action plans include a purpose, a message, a way to express the message, and an audience. So if we have all of those kind of skills, then we can engage in advocacy and activism, in an effective way. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Carter-Francique.
To find the unmute button. Technology today. Thank you so much, Dr. August, and sort of giving us those definitions and breaking those things down, because I know that many of us may even desire an interest or just trying to learn about the differences between, am I being an activist? Am I an advocate? Or, how would I sort of classify myself with the efforts that I've participated in or that I've seen others participate in? At the end of all of this, one of the things I want us to sort of keep in mind with regards to this presentation today, with the work that others are doing, with the issues that have really been resonating today, but I would even say in the past that, some have sort of hit the pause button in the midst of COVID, in the midst of Black Lives Matter, which is sort of the issues that we at the Institute are having to manage right now with our commentary and our speaking engagements and our work with our student interns as well. But one of the things is to think about this notion of the words of Ella Baker, who was one of those that came from those historic movements that I talked about before, the civil rights movement. She said, in order to see where we are going, we not only must remember where we have been, but we must understand where we have been. And I think we're at a prime space and a perfect location today to speak here with the Santa Clara County Library about where we can find those histories, where we can begin to understand the notion of organizing. Ella Baker was an organizer. She is, in many ways, the reason why King was able to do a lot of the things that he was able to do, as well as one of the chief organizers behind the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. And so there is a text out there called Ella Baker's Catalytic Leadership that is a great opportunity to learn a little bit more on community engagement, because we're here with our community, and communication for social justice. So I encourage each and every one of you out there to remember and understand. Okay. When we talk about sport, social justice, and activism, as Dr. August so eloquently laid out those different aspects, I want you to sort of think about how have you seen notions of advocacy and activism play out throughout your lifetime in the sport community? And if it's, not even of your lifetime, but even if we think this past year, how has that been? I want you to sort of consider that. But to know that in doing that, we're really sort of thinking about ways that we can bridge the past to the present and also create a better avenue for the future. So to delve a little bit into the Olympic Project for Human Rights, there's a great text, and we'll share that with you here later, by Dr. Harry Edwards, entitled The Revolt of the Black Athlete. It's actually in its 50th anniversary version. I can't believe it was that long ago. But in that protest, in that 1968 games, as we can see here on this card, it unveiled the fact that there was a demonstration, right? Demonstration conducted by African-American athletes, Tommie Smith and John Carlos, after winning gold and bronze medals. Each athlete raised a black gloved fist and kept them raised until the national anthem finished. They wore human rights badges on their jackets, and I have one on my other jacket I would show you guys right now. But over and above winning medals, I said these athletes made names for themselves by an act of racial protest. The raising of the Black Power fist stood for those against the political and racial injustice in America. Again, it was done on a global stage. In addition, Smith and Carlos received death threats from their racist Americans for making this gesture. And that was a hardship that Tommie Smith, John Carlos detailed in their own personal autobiographies. And again, Tommie talks about in Withdrawn Arms. So I encourage you again to see that movie. But this notion of the bridge, right? The bridge came when this gesture, again, American backlash, can be compared to, yes, not only what they experienced then, but Colin Kaepernick today, and some of our other Black athletes in different spaces, sporting spaces. But I would not only add Black athletes. So to Don O'Neill, who's out there, yay, congratulations. That second place individual was Peter Norman from Australia that stood in solidarity with Smith and Carlos. So if you happen to take, again, a visit to San Jose State University, you're gonna see that historic statue there in front of you. And they leave that space open. And to, just so you know, Peter Norman actually requested, because they were gonna put him on the podium with them, but he communicated to the artist that said, leave it empty, so others will know what it's like to stand in solidarity. And that's exactly what he did. But much like, and what many people may or may not know, is that he experienced the same backlash in Australia that Smith and Carlos experienced over here for standing in solidarity. And so, being an ally, standing in solidarity, also will come with some of the same experiences as those that are standing for social justice, fighting for social change. Okay. Move to the next one. And so I want you, and I have this picture here for a reason, because I really want you to sort of think about the Olympic Project for Human Rights. Again, occurred in 1968. And I want you to understand some of the things that sort of came out from it. They had certain things that they were fighting for. Number one, it served as a stage or to stage an international protest of the persistent and systemic violation of Black people's human rights in the United States. Number two, it exposed America's historical exploitation of Black athletes as political propaganda tools in both the national and international arenas. Number three, its goal was also to establish a standard of political responsibility among Black athletes, basically looking at their needs and their interests of the Black community, and to devise effective and agreeable ways by which athletes could accommodate the demands of such responsibilities. And number four, it was an opportunity to make the Black community aware of the substantial hidden dynamics and consequences of their sports involvement. So we oftentimes, again, as Dr. August shared, you know, sport is, yes, a physical contested terrain, but in this space too, we find that we fight for racial justice. We fight for pay equity. If we look at the work of Megan Rapinoe and what she's been doing. So there's many different issues that are within our broader society that are also reflected in the space of sport that we work to fight and make change for. And so you can see not only the images in front, but if you look back behind with our images here, you see some of those other athletes, the women from the Minnesota Lynx. We see those, you know, LeBron James and other athletes talking about I Can't Breathe and Breonna Taylor and standing up for other issues that are happening in our broader society. And this is how these athletes have chosen to use their platform to promote social change. But there are many ways that you can do it, many ways that they have done this. Some do it through this notion of what's called typologies of sport activism. A dear colleague, Joseph Cooper, who is a faculty affiliate with the Institute, produced this great research talking about these 5 different types of activism. The first one on your left being symbolic activism, and it focuses on this notion of social awareness and structural change in areas of economic, education, politics, and social engagement. So you may see individuals, again, standing atop a podium to speak out or demonstrating, to talk about and highlight these issues that are happening in our society and cause one to go to those respective websites or platforms to learn more about them. Got myself here in a picture with regards to scholarly activism. Dr. August and I both engage in constant engagement of putting pen to paper and writing articles on different issues, but also standing at the front of the classroom and sharing with our students different issues that awareness perhaps needs to be raised about and how they can go about making social change. But more than anything, again, helping our students to remember and to understand, okay? Or for in this case, perhaps learn, as opposed to remember. There's grassroots activism. So this focuses on the broader social uplift efforts that begin to push back against sort of the power structures and ultimately try to create some change in the local community. We see here some water, so it may be the Flint water crisis, or if we can think in this time of COVID, you know, we've had a lot of opportunities of you know, obtaining food and doing food drives and things of that nature to be able to support the local community from a grassroots level, providing PPE for individuals and their families, or perhaps rides to go get COVID vaccinations, okay? Sport-based activism, again, Megan is here, focuses on action taken by athletes to challenge and/or alter a specific rule or law that maintains these oppressive sort of systems. So again, pay equity is something that really comes to mind or should come to mind in the sports space. And finally, economic activism. This focuses on the actions by individuals and our groups or businesses to promote fiscal empowerment and social uplift and sort of marginalized communities. One way that we've seen this take place is a number of athletes using their platform to raise money, awareness and money to give back to other groups that are perhaps marginalized. CP3, Chris Paul, giving to HBCUs. So we've seen other athletes that are definitely using their platform to do this in our local community and again, across the globe. So again, think about these when we talk about activism and the different ways that athletes, or perhaps even you, can utilize your platform to promote social change. So this comes to you all now out there in the community, in the greater Santa Clara space. How can we work for social justice as community members? So I want you to sort of reflect on yourself. You're perhaps doing something now. In this case, I sort of think about, mentoring as a way to promote social change. Again, educating others as a way to promote social change. For some of us, and I have to thank my parents, coming in and stepping in and having virtual Zoom meetings with my children is a way to support us during these times of trying to promote social change and being there to support. But I want to know from you, how do you promote social change? And as I pose this question to you all out there in the audience, I also want to share with you some of the ways that communities that we have communicated with over the past 12 months have sort of utilized their platform to promote social change. So I'll share that with you now. Can we still see my screen? You see my screen? Okay. So how do you promote social change? This is a Padlet that we put together, just another platform, but it was an opportunity for us to share with others and provide a space for others to share how they promote social change. So we've got student athletes here, we've got our interns, we've got those that we've engaged with in the community that are educators, teachers, mothers, fathers, that are talking about how they promote social change. And there's a number of ways that you can do it that we often share. You can, again, educate others. You can advocate for legislation. You can run for office or run for class president, if we may think about that. Demonstrate at a protest, and we've seen a lot of that occurrence in this space and time. Raise public awareness through social media campaigns, research and dissemination, raising money, not only money, but also maybe raising resources. It may be providing books, it may be providing clothing for others. Write to a company or public official. You can also engage in community service, as I do with my children a lot. Beth and I have to do that, do hunger drives. We've gone out to clean up the community as well. Get the press involved in some of these activities. And there's many other ways to sort of show your efforts towards social change. So I want you to think about this. I believe Beth probably dropped the link in the chat for you, and you can add your voice. We welcome you to add your voice on this platform. So Dr. August, did we see anybody sort of drop information in the chat about how they use their platform for social change?
Not yet, but I know that Beth did drop the link to the Padlet. So perhaps
Great.
people are adding to the Padlet rather than the chat.
Wonderful, wonderful. But there are a number of ways here. I think I saw Mel Day, one of our wonderful collaborators that uses her platform as an artist to promote social change. And so she shared her own information here on this platform through some things that she's done with her Wall of Song project. And we invite you to even check into that. We collaborated with her for National Girls and Women in Sports Day 2 years in a row, one face-to-face, one virtual. But we welcome you to check that program out, and we'll drop a link to our YouTube channel so you can see that program as well. Dr. August has shared her own platform about how she promotes social change. But it's a great way to learn and see how others use their platform. Sometimes we may not know how we can best use our platform to promote social change, but perhaps these will provide a few ideas, information to share, and also maybe connect with. So we invite you to join and to share with us on these efforts. Okay. So we're going to finish up here because we know time is coming to an end. So let me get back there. We see my screen? Did I make it big? Okay. Okay. So at this point, we're going to open it up for questions. As we say, questions are the path to learning. And again, I know with being a part of Santa Clara County Libraries, I know that our institute, our university is a part of the Martin Luther King Jr. Library. And so there are a whole host of resources that are available for you all out there to, as I saw the film drop, check it out, watch Fist of Freedom, and there are other valuable resources that are available. Let's see. I'm just going to check the chat real quick and see where we are. Okay. Great. So if there's no questions at this time, we definitely wanted to take an opportunity to, again, thank each and every one of you for coming to this presentation and provide you with a few resources for social change. And so Dr. August, feel free to chime in here as well. I know she found a number of these books. They're just a range of books at all levels. Not knowing who would be in attendance today, we definitely wanted to provide some resources that fit, different generations, different identities as far as interest, but to also open up to know that there are a host of resources available within the library that can definitely speak to issues of change. Yes, I'm sharing here Ella Baker's Catalytic Leadership, but there's some other books and texts here that may be of interest as well. Dr. August, did you want to add in?
Yeah, just briefly, I think, this set of books kind of gives a good indication of the wide range of causes that people can advocate for. So, you may not have a cause yet, but if you want to become inspired, I think reading any of these books would be a great start to kind of see not only what lights a fire under certain activists, but then sort of the mechanics of like how they take action, how they come to the point where they know that they need to act, and how they manage to convince others to kind of help them out in their efforts. So I think this is a great starting point, but feel free to branch out, and I know that your local libraries will have a lot of resources to help you out as you kind of explore the causes and find out what motivates you to act.
Yes, and I see Lisa Liu, thank you so much again for inviting us to this space. You're dropping a number of pieces of information and sharing those with all involved. A little closer to home, we wanted to share, again, more information about the Olympic Project for Human Rights in the voices of those there that can sort of tell their story. So Dr. Harry Edwards, The Revolt of the Black Athlete, is a book. Again, it's its 50th anniversary edition, I should say. Tommie Smith, in his voice, again, The Silent Gesture, talks about his life, as well as the John Carlos story. So John Carlos sharing his story in this text as well. And most recently, and I have a couple of boxes, I've got my screen up right now so you can't see it, my virtual background. But most recently, Tommie Smith was honored and recognized and has his own image and likeness on the Wheaties box with regards to the 1968 games. And so, if you don't have a box, maybe check out there and see. All proceeds go to the NAACP to provide support for their cause and efforts and the things that they're doing. Again, here's another group, an organization using their platform to promote social change and combining with a sport, an athlete to speak to those issues. Another resource we wanted to provide for you was not only our institute, we have a monthly webinar called Sport Conversations for Change, which Dr. August and I serve as the moderators to those conversations, speaking on a host of issues. So we invite you to come to that conversation. We've got one that's upcoming Thursday that's going to speak with our very own interns to talk about how they've used their platform to promote social change. And to learn even more about them and another colleague and institute of ours is the Human Rights Institute. We have posted up there some great presentations by our young students that spoke about how they're going to use their platform to social change. Some of them are athletes, some of them are not. They're just really concerned young people that have a drive and motivation to promote social change in sport and in society. And so we invite you to listen to those amazing range of presentations and just to continue to support their effort by giving to the university. This is something that's of interest to you, but more than anything, also think about visiting our library and learn a little bit more about Dr. Harry Edwards' efforts through his own collection. So we'll drop those
Dr.
links.
Carter-Francique, I didn't want to interrupt, but we do have a question in the chat. So
sorry.
I'll go ahead and read it for you, and then
yeah,
if you'd like to take that one. So sorry, my chat box got really tiny suddenly. From 382, do you think the pandemic's pause of normal professional sports will serve as a setback to the cause of sports activists? Or perhaps have we grown during this time due to Black Lives Matter and so on?
I personally think we have grown. I think it's been a collective pause and an opportunity for those involved in sport to use their platform even more so during this time period. I think for our young athletes, we're at a college, university, to really sort of take an opportunity to think and reflect, see what some of those professional athletes, how they're using their platform to gain some insight from. But also taking the time to learn. We've been in Zoomville. I call it Zoomville. And there's just been a host of great presentations and webinars and discussions going on to learn about the issues. I think it's also been an interesting time period because we're seeing sort of in this collective pause, sort of a quietness and a forced effort, forced opportunity, I say, to listen, to sort of hear the voices, hear the issues, hear the cries, and for some to be able to understand a little bit more what's going on, and to really, I think we've seen a pivot through many of our sport organizations and associations, and even our university setting, to figure out how they can support athletes in their activist efforts to be more front-facing. So I think, yes, it is a pause, but I think the pause is a time to listen, not so much in the movement, but I hope that, to your point, 382, I hope it's a time that we can continue to not only have these efforts illuminated and have these athletes sort of think about them, but also use the time, much like the Olympic Project for Human Rights, to strategize and organize so they can maintain that momentum that they've gained, perhaps even communicate and join others in their efforts so they can work together to ensure that these issues are addressed and addressed as we move down the road to, I'm going to say, repopulation. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Great question. These are just the final resources for us again. If you missed us at the beginning, our website, please continue to connect with the Institute for the Study of Sports, Society, and Social Change through our website, through our Facebook, through our Twitter, through our Instagram, and yes, again, our YouTube, to see some of the great work that we're doing. And feel free to email us, if you have questions, are looking for resources and ways that we can be of support, we're definitely there to support you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carter-Francique and Dr. August. We appreciate all this information and all the resources that you have shared.